My name is Sander Lak and I am Dutch originally. I have lived all around the world and I have been really lucky to have worked in many places in Europe and America and been able to start my own brand in New York 5 years ago called Sies Marjan. I actually wanted to be a filmmaker. I didn't know anything about fashion. It wasn't my childhood dream. I really wanted to be a film director. So I applied for film school in Holland and Amsterdam, and I was too young and they didn't let me in. So then I decided to go to art school. I ended up being accepted at Arnhem, and I kind of understood that fashion was something I liked, but I didn't think it would be my career. I really thought it would just be to fill the time till I was old enough to go to film school. And then in Arnhem, I kind of discovered that I really liked fashion more than I thought. I really enjoyed making clothes and telling stories with the narrative of fashion, and I really got very excited by it. So over the 4 years, I basically learned everything from scratch. So I'd never touched a sewing machine. I'd never bought clothes. I really was learning everything from absolute scratch. So what was exciting was that after 4 years, I felt like, I learned a lot, but I didn't feel like I knew enough. So what I did is afterwards, I wanted to go and do a master's degree, which I got accepted at Central St. Martin's in London. So I did menswear there, and I really spent those 2 years sort of like honing in on my craft and really learning a lot, very specifically about what it is that I can do and what my strengths are and what my weaknesses are. And then when I graduated there, I wanted to start my own label, but I got a job and then I was like, let me do this job and then maybe later on I could start my own label. So then I went to Paris to start a job that then fell through, and I got another job in New York working for Philip Lim, who I had never heard of. I was, running out of money and, I had 6 years of education. So I was like, okay, I'll just take whatever job. And I went to Philip Lim, did the menswear there. While at Philip Lim, I got a job offer from Christophe Descarnet, who was the creative director of Balmain at the time, who I had dropped my CV at the store. I basically saw him when I was in Paris before New York. So when I was in Paris before New York, I saw him on the street and I walked up to him and I was like, I need a job. And he was like, okay, well, just give your resume to the store and, we'll see. And of course, I heard nothing back for months. So I thought that was never going to happen. So then when I was in New York and Philip had, arranged my visa and all of that stuff, and I moved to America and I started the job. 2 months in, they offered me a job to go work for Balmain. So I finished the season in New York at Philip, and then I moved to Paris. And then I worked for Balmain for 2 years, 2.5 years. And I did the menswear and I did a lot of the women's wear. So it was all those collections with the shoulder pads, the jackets that look like this, and all of those military style kind of ripped jeans and t-shirts. So we worked on all of that, which was very exciting and very, it was 2009. So it was the year after the big crisis, which your generation, you guys don't know. I am a little bit older than you guys, and in 2008 there was a big financial crisis that had a big effect on fashion and everything. And I was working for probably the most expensive brand at the time, and we were selling jeans for $2,000 and t-shirts for $1,000, and it was the most ridiculous thing, but it was very successful and it was very, very exciting to be there at that time. And then I got a job at Dries van Noten to work there initially for the menswear, and then moved on to the women's wear, and then did that for 5 years. And then after that, I went to New York to start Sies Marjan. I mean, first of all, I love clothes. I think that's a very important part of it. Like, I love a garment. I love a shirt. I love a shirt pocket. I love, stitching. I love a hem. I love a knit, a yarn, the feeling of something. That's what I really love. I love telling a story with a collection. I love telling a story with clothes. I don't love a lot of the stuff that comes with the circus of fashion. That is not why I do what I do. For me, it really is because I love the garment. I love the process. I love that we as fashion designers can look at anything. Anything can be an inspiration. Anything can be anything that you can use. We're not bound as designers to only be able to look at, one or two things. Like, we can literally look at anything that surrounds us. Anything can give us that spark that we need. And I think that's what I really love about fashion. I think, they are on one hand, completely different because the countries are so different. France and the United States are two completely different countries. The two cities are completely different types of cities, but they do the same thing. When it comes to fashion, there is an industry, an important, big industry in both of those cities that, have their own language and their own identity. But they function in the same way, like there's a hierarchy, there's, the old guards of designers, then there's like the new young designers, and then you have everything in between. And, you have institutions that support, whether it's the CFDA in New York or the Institute in Paris that really supports, the Fashion Week there. Those things are very, very similar. But when it really comes down to creatively, the two cities are completely different. Paris is really about, I would say about a form of individuality and originality and a purity in a way, in a very kind of like old school way of what high-end fashion is. And New York is more industry and is more commercial and is more about, what kind of business can you build with the clothes that you make. And I don't see either of them as better or worse. I think they're just two different sides of the coin. I always feel like the best is the combination of both. I think there's a part of Paris that I really agree with, and then there's a part of New York that I really agree with. And I think, if you put them together, I think you get something quite interesting. They're just two different, they're completely different places. Every job that I've had, you always have a lingering of the previous job that goes into the next job, like there's always, because I think it would probably be the same if you're an actor and you're doing 2 movies, 3 movies back to back. Like, there'll always be a little bit of your previous character in the next one. And I think that's a little bit how it is when you do different jobs as well. Especially in my case, I only had a weekend in between one job to the next always. There was never more than a weekend, maybe half a week between one job, the next job, the next job. So you really you put this mask on of the brand that you work for, then you take it off and you put the other brand on, but you have a little bit of lingering in between them. And I think that's something that is really interesting because you learn completely different things at the job. You learn things that are really helpful for the next job. And you also learn things that you really have to try and get rid of as soon as you can in your next job. The first months in your new job are really about navigating between what can I use, what do I need to forget about? What do I need to learn? What do I not understand? What do I understand? So I think there's always a little bit of a transition period between jobs. If you put like a year between 2 jobs, it's a different story. You probably by that point have filtered enough. But if you do jobs back to back, like I have, you will always it's like a car crash. You're just like all of a sudden in this new job, you're like, okay, how do I, and then you just manage and then you go to the next one. And it's interesting. I decided so this is almost 10 years into my career of working for other people, I kind of almost forgot about my original dream of starting my own label. I was really happy working for other people, and I was really entertained by it. I was learning a lot of things. I loved meeting different people and working on different products. So I kind of forgot about this idea that I used to have when I was in college to start my own label. So I got to that point where I realized that I needed to make a change. I needed to make a move. And New York happened kind of to me. It was not something that I necessarily was searching for, but I knew I wanted to do something different. So not another job working for someone else. And then New York kind of came to me, this opportunity to start something not completely from scratch, but really build on a house that wasn't there anymore. A designer lost his business, and there was sort of a leftover of that business, which was an atelier, sewers, pattern makers, office, an office space. And I had the opportunity to fill that in with a new brand. When that kind of came about, it was very much sort of a dream come true, because all of a sudden I could fill in all of those things from all the things I learned and from all the things that I was always frustrated about, working for other people, not being able to make certain decisions. I all of a sudden had to, sort of decide all of that for myself. So that's kind of how it came about. It wasn't New York because I chose New York to be the place for it. It was really because that's where the opportunity was for me. Sies is my father's first name, and Marjan is my mom's first name. So we spent about 9 months thinking of names. We went from all the most ridiculous things to my own name, and then I wasn't comfortable with that. So then we sort of still wanted it to be very personal, and then we ended up with Sies Marjan, which I really liked because it's a name that is a fictional person. It's not me, but it's an extension of me. It's not clear whether this person is male or female or where this person is from. I remember when we started, I had many people asking if it was an Iranian name or a Spanish name or an Asian name. Like, they weren't sure because Sies Marjan sounds like many different things. And I like that because that's really that's my background, and I was comfortable with that, to sort of hide behind that name. So Sies Marjan is really a brand about color. Color was always the first starting point for what we did. So I really started with building a color card and then choose fabrics based on the colors that I wanted to work with. So I think there's a picture coming up. There's a picture coming up soon that shows one of the color boards. Oh, this is my mom. So we did shoes as well, accessories. So this is one of the runway shows. Oh, here. So this is one of the boards that we did for one of the collections. So here you can see we would start with a board that is just completely random. I would just pick images based on their color, and then I would color swatch them and then build a color card that I liked. And then as soon as there was a color card, then I would pick fabrics, and the fabrics would really be with the colors in mind. So I would pick fabrics that would complement the color or would contradict the color. So sometimes if it was a very artificial color, I would pick a very natural fiber, natural fabric to do that artificial color in, and vice versa. And then we would build a collection from there. This is one of our first campaigns that we did with Bruce Weber, which was really fun. So this was kind of like the first image that we really put out there in magazines and stuff that was in our curation. So it really shows kind of like, the family aspect, like this big, happy, multicultural Sies Marjan family. I really wanted it to be age and race and all of that stuff doesn't matter. It's just about sort of a positive mentality. So here you can see one of the colors, like the really very neon bright plastic Barbie pink, but then in a really supernatural Astrakhan fur, 100% silk gazar, to kind of really contradict, the artificialness of that pink. This is a page of celebrities, which obviously is a very important part of business. It's something that is really important for young designers to try and get as much exposure. And the celebrity culture is something that is still a very good vehicle to get your message across. I was always very strict with editing who the celebrities are and what the moments are, and to make sure that it's all aligned with what the brand is. So here we did a collaboration with Swarovski for one collection, the dress on the left. This is another finale of one of the shows where we had these cannons like throw out all of this confetti and the colors of the collection. We did many projects, like this is the Atelier project with photographer Theo Wenner, where we shot Elizabeth Payton in our studio. And then we had different types of people. This is some development for shoes, which is a really big business. We didn't have bags yet, so we really were on shoes first. So then here, another fitting pictures. These are some of the prints that worked really well. All of that kind of like washed out. The menswear, we started with women's wear, and then we build out the menswear afterwards, really based on the fact that I was always wearing the women's wear myself. And then we sort of started with a little capsule collection and then build out the menswear more and more of the show. This was the last show in February with Rem Koolhaas and OMA and the Guggenheim, where we did all of these natural fibers, shoes, shiny fabrics. I love a shiny fabric. So this is one of our definitely best-selling items, the reflective coat on the left, which was a really fun fabric years ago. And then after a year of seeing it everywhere, I couldn't see it anymore, but it was doing so well, so we had to keep repeating it. That's also a good lesson. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Always repeat something that works well, even if you're tired of it. Like I cannot see that reflective fabric anymore for the rest of my life, but it was really important to repeat it, repeat it, repeat it. Again, reflective fabrics, it's really something that works very well on Instagram, and it's flashy, it's like direct. Then here's some of the product we did with Rem Koolhaas for the Guggenheim Museum shop. So that's kind of like really in a nutshell, sort of like, some of the stuff that we did. We really built it very organically. So we started with a women's wear collection, then we started adding shoes, and then we started adding the menswear. And so we really sort of built, slowly you build up from the ground, and then, you try things out, and sometimes things work and sometimes they don't. And then, when they don't, you learn from them, and then you move on, and then, you try something else. I think it's really important to always try things and always try and repeat, even if something doesn't work, try it again, because sometimes the market, or the customer, they need to see it once or twice, 3 times to kind of really get what you're doing. When I was working for other people, I used to draw, hundreds of sketches a day, and it would just be drawing. And when I started Sies Marjan, I kind of didn't want to do that same thing. So I stopped drawing, and I really started working with the fabrics and really started working with vintage pieces. And, I really love buying a lot of really cheap clothes, like by the kilo, just a bag full of stuff, and try things on, put them upside down, cut off a sleeve, have a piece of fabric that you have in the color that you like, and add those sleeves to them, and put them on a model. Like it was very 3-dimensional, and that was something that was really exciting. It was never a way that I worked before, and it really creates a lot of new ideas for me, which obviously also can be quite complicated because it's quicker and sometimes easier to just sketch out the whole collection, make the sketches, and then go from there. But I really wanted it to be different. So you can see when you look at the clothes that a lot of them have a certain kind of like ease to them, and sort of a slouchiness and a looseness. It's because the garments are never drawn out, they're never like made from a sketch. They're always sort of like from the fabric, almost like thrown on the model and put holes in them and put like your head through this. And so it makes it a bit more loose and free in a way. That said, obviously, you can't do every piece in the collection like that. So, you also need to just do a skirt and a pant and a shirt, especially for merchandising. And when you get into the merchandising plan and what the stores are requesting, then you get into more the technical details of how to put a collection together. But the starting point was always very free, and just have a model, try 100 things out, and then take pictures, and then cut out the pictures, take the top part of this one, the half of that one, put them together like this. Very free and creative. And I think that's very important, in the beginning of any collection. Then, of course, you also need to have a moment that you take a step back, you look at it, and then you start seeing, okay, these are all the creative ideas. What is the product that I can take out of this? Like, what is your best-selling dress? What is your shirt? What is your, where is the part where we can see what type of shoe goes with it? What kind of bag goes with it? What should move to menswear? What should stay with women's wear? It's a really exciting process. I think fashion is all about desirability in the sense that, there is almost no other more important factor. Then, of course, the question is, what is desirability? That's open, and anyone has their own version of that, and anyone has their own opinion about that. But I do think that in the end, what we do is a product. It's a product that needs to find a home, find a body, find a customer. That can only happen when there is a desirability for that person to want to be a part of, whether that's the brand that you're making or the clothes that you're making, whether it's about making a skirt that everyone wants, or whether it's about being the brand that people want to be a part of. There's many different versions of desirability and how to achieve that and what that is. But I do think that is kind of like the core of anything you do, because without that, it's just an empty thing that's out there. If nobody wants it, then why is it there? We're not, in that sense, we're not artists. We're not, art is really something where desirability it's not about that at all. It's about 100% about the communication of something, and fashion isn't that. It is when you're a student, and it is when you are experimenting, but once you start in the industry, that is a reality of the game. Yeah. I think that really depends on your own vision. I think desirability can really be anything. There are so many different versions of what people like and what people accept and what people find desirable. I do think that if you are authentic to your own vision or version of that, that's kind of the only thing you can work with. Because if you try to think about what is desirable and then do that thing that is desirable, you're not going to really have an authentic version of who you are as a designer. So I think it's really important to think yourself, what do I find desirable? What do I love? Where do I get excited? What part of a garment makes me excited, or what part of fashion makes me excited, and what do I want to buy? What do I want to wear? If I had all the money in the world, how would I look? Those are the questions, and then the desirability will come out of those questions. That every brand and every designer has their own way of doing those things. When we started, really only went purely kind of on our instincts and really what we thought would work. And then once we grew the business, we started having more people on our team to help and to also give insight to what the stores were requesting, what the customers were liking. We would get more and more feedback, because in the beginning, when we started, there was no customer because there was no Sies Marjan. So we put our first collection out there, and then only 6 months later, we could get the first reactions of people who bought the clothes, because before that there was nothing there. So it takes a year, 2 years for customers to kind of understand, and before you can really communicate with them. And so I think, after a while we started understanding who our customer was, what she wanted, then what he wanted, what they wanted. And then you kind of start collecting that information, and then you use it where you think it will work. You cannot only work with your customer in mind, but you cannot also only work with your own vision in mind. So it's like a combination. Sometimes you have to do something that goes against what the market is telling you, because you really believe in it. And sometimes you have to listen to the market, and you just have to, be like, okay, fine, we'll give you another reflective coat because you really want a reflective coat. You have to do a little bit of both. so much, so many changes, but I also really like them because I wouldn't want to be in the exact same situation when we graduated. When we graduated in 2006, the world was different. The industry was different. Product was different. If everything was still the same as back then, I probably would have quit already because I would have been bored. So for me, it is exciting that there is change. Obviously, some of the biggest changes that happen for me and us as designers in fashion are the same big changes that happen to anyone in any other industry. It's like digitization of everything, the social media, the online world has really opened up completely new dimensions of shopping, of creating, of consuming, and that stuff wasn't the case when we graduated. There was Facebook and MySpace, and you had a few things, of course, but it wasn't anything that was really interrupting the fashion cycle. And now things are completely different, and I think that's really exciting. I don't always love every single change, but it is exciting to have a change in front of you that you have to work with and that you have to adjust to. I also think that the idea of what fashion is has changed a lot. I think when we were in college, there was still a bit more like an old school hierarchy of high-end fashion, and then you had sort of, your middle ground, and then you had the lower part. And now there's all of these different dimensions left and right. And, the ideas that we were taught in school of, when something is really, really fashion is completely different now. And I think that's really exciting because fashion is more, for the people. It's not like just this intellectual, thing that it used to be in a way. And that comes, of course, also with its own price and, this overexposure. And sometimes fashion is more entertainment than craft. I don't always agree with that. But again, it's a change. You go with it. You take a little bit, and then you leave a little bit, and, you find your way through that. You go like deeper into what the products are and the taste levels are. Yes, absolutely. That always changes. But I think overarchingly, it's the same thing. I do still think that it's the same kind of combination of, desirability, relevance, price point. Those are kind of combined what everyone is always sort of looking at. And sometimes that is a certain dress, and the other time it's a certain designer, and then it's a certain style, and then it's a certain cultish kind of like moment. Like it can move around, but it's always the same kind of want that people have, that people feel like I need to have this in my life. Because in the end, what we do is not a necessity. Like we are not making product that is an absolute necessity for people to have. What we do is an addition to what they already have. And so therefore it's a luxury. They need to feel that it's worth them spending the money on another garment, because most likely they'll already have a lot of garments in their closet. So, it's kind of like what makes it worth it for them. And that specifically always changes, but in the end, it's that same desire, it's that same moment that you're in your closet and you're looking around, you're like, oh, I really wish I had that one shirt that I have in my head and I can't find it. And that becomes then desirability. This is obviously a very interesting year. I think there's a lot of questions about everything, in the world and every industry that are very unclear. And I think fashion is definitely like that too. I hope there will be some real changes in the cycle of fashion, in the timeline of how many collections and how many things we have to make and how many shows and I think we've all been doing way too much for way too long. But I have to say that I'm seeing already that people are kind of going back to the old way of working. So maybe it will go back to it. I hope not. I think we should all take a little bit of a lesson from having some of this time to really reflect and see what we need and how much we need to work and how much, we really need to put out there. But, I think the industry is so big by this point as well that there's no one direction for this industry to go. So there's like many, many different directions directions. There's going to be people who are just going to do exactly what they used to do. Then there's going to be people who are going to do something completely new. Then some people are going to go back to how things were even before, like really go back to like the artisanalness of fashion. And then you might have people who won't even actually make physical clothes, but it's just a digital version of fashion. Like there's going to be all of that because, the industry is big enough to support all those different ways. And that's quite exciting.